Welcome 32 and everybody. TJ Wingard here with you for another episode of Beyond the Tape. A bit of an emergency episode for today, as the one and the only Dane Brugler has put out a not just new mock draft, but a 2-round mock draft. Something I did on my own personal channel is not only make mock drafts of my own, but also react to other big names in the space in their mock drafts. So would love to do the same here on Beyond the Tape. Hope the engagement with this video does well, so we can continue to do stuff like this. Let me know if this is something you would want to see more of. Without further ado, we got a 2-round mock draft to go ahead and break down who I think goes too high, who falls too low, some interesting team to player fits, all that fun stuff. And then we'll give Dane Brugler a grade at the end of the mock draft. And of course, would love to hear what you grade this mock for your team or as a mock overall down below in the comment sections, the replies to this live stream if you're watching on X. But yeah, let's go ahead and jump right into it, starting with the Tennessee Titans taking Cam Ward. No real surprise here. I think this is going to be pretty chalk in a lot of mocks. I do think there's going to be a conversation for Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter here. We'll see what the Titans do in free agency, especially with the pumpkin that Sam Darnold has turned into. I don't think there's a world where you could go Darnold in free agency, Carter at 1 or something like that. I don't think Minnesota was going to let him out of the building. Maybe now they will. But I don't really see that veteran option available. So it feels like they're going to have to go through the draft. If there's a quarterback I am going to, staple my name to at the top of this class, it's Cam Ward for me as well. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Would be an interesting fit there with Brian Callahan. And number 2, Abdul Carter. I think we're going to start seeing more and more of things like this, conversations about who's the best non-quarterback in this class. About a month ago, it felt like a done deal. It's Travis Hunter. And now I think there's going to be debates for some people. Right now, I think I still lean towards Hunter. But Carter's been a top 5 player on my board. He's been my H1 this whole entire class, and he's all the way up to player 2 for me right now. And ultimately, the further along we get into this process, I will eventually make a final determination of who I think the best player in this class is. Right now, I lean towards Travis Hunter, but they're both super special players, 2 blue chippers in a class that doesn't have a whole lot of blue chippers. And the idea of like Abdul Carter, one of 2 things, supplementing Myles Garrett if they do decide to move on from him, that's interesting. Or the idea of adding him to a defensive line that already features Myles Garrett, also terrifying, especially as a fan of a team in the AFC North. That sounds horrifying. And also, like, the Browns have always beaten up on the Steelers tackles. So adding one more guy to that mix sounds horrifying. But I do think there's going to be legit conversations. I wonder if this is like a declaration for Dane that he's got Carter over Travis Hunter. If that's the case, I think there's going to be boards like that. Okay. And maybe I'll come to that same evaluation. But right now, I still got Hunter just ever so slightly over Carter. But the idea of him going to the Browns is really interesting with or without Myles Garrett. But it is them foregoing on the quarterback position, which, I know that's going to be a tough one for a lot of Browns fans, right? Like, we got to draft one, we got to sign one. Ultimately, I think with how much, I know the injury to Deshaun Watson, but he is still a huge part of your cap hit. Odds are you probably just go into this year, you get Kirk Cousins to do what Russell Wilson did last year, play for a vet minimum, someone else is paying you a bag, come play with us. You'd be working with Kevin Stefanski, a former OC in Minnesota. Let's roll with this. And then if we still feel like we need to assess the quarterback position, we draft a guy in 26, which, odds are, I feel like it's going to be a lot of teams who'd rather draft one in 26 rather than 25. Then we get to the Giants. Travis Hunter comes off the board here. This would also be awesome. Yes, I know quarterback is definitely a question. We'll see if in the second round here, Dane is able to address it for one of these 2 teams. I figure there's only going to be 2 quarterbacks here in the first round for Dane's mock. We'll see if I'm wrong, though. But in the event that the Giants don't go quarterback, they could use a guy as a weapon opposite of Malik Neighbors. So if they feel like, hey, Travis can play full-time receiver, he helps a ton there. They also are a team that's in absolute, utter, desperate need for a corner, like a shutdown number 1 guy on that side of the ball. And to me, like, I am in the camp of, like, I'd play Hunter 75% of the time at corner, 25%, come up with some packages, some plays and some roles for him, specifically on money downs, third down, red zone stuff. That's when you use him on offense. So for me, I'm kind of looking at this and I'm like, wow, this would make me feel a whole lot better about the Giants secondary. You still get to use him as a supplemental weapon to Malik Neighbors. Quarterback's still a question, but there are worse outcomes than to leave a draft with Travis Hunter. Trust me. Like, I know a lot of Giants fans or even Browns fans from the pick before are going to be looking at this like, come on, we got to draft a quarterback. If you ever end up with Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, I'd still be pretty psyched about that. Like, I know these are QB needy teams, but I'd be pumped about that. But we'll see in the second round. Maybe one of those 2 teams does get a quarterback. Next 2 picks, Ted McMillan and then Will Johnson. McMillan to the Pats makes a lot of sense. it feels like a lot of people kind of soured on this offensive line class. Not that I think there's a lot of people who never saw it as a class that should have multiple guys in the top 10, but I think you're starting to see that as more consensus in a lot of mock drafts. And I get it. I think there's still a lot to like with some of those guys, but here at number 4, do you feel better about Tek McMillan versus a Will Campbell? Maybe he's playing inside, or Kelvin Banks. Some of the same questions there. Armand Nembu, things like that. I could see a world where Tek McMillan's a lot safer of a pick versus forcing an offensive lineman here at 4. And also you still have the second round, and where the Pats are at, top of the second round, that might be a good spot to go ahead and grab a guy. But Tek McMillan here at 4 makes a ton of sense. I think it makes, Polk, Baker, so on and so forth, that much, Pop Douglas, makes those guys feel that much better being in your receiving room as they're getting knocked down or run. Jags, Will Johnson, man, if you watch that secondary, if you watch that defense this year, they need some help. And we'll see if Ryan Nielsen's back for another year as the DC. With Doug Peterson gone, doesn't feel super likely. He's had some good stops along the way, but a new defensive scheme that might give us an idea of what type of corner. But once Hunter's off the board, Johnson's my next highest graded corner. So I think this makes a lot of sense. He's got coverage flexibility. He's got the body type to be good in man, but a great understanding for his assignment in zone, and he's a really nice athlete too. So I think no matter who is calling plays, whatever the scheme is in Jacksonville, Will Johnson plus Tyson Campbell, that's a really nice 1-2 combo there on the outside. And they made a lot of investment on the edge. So I think Mason Graham could be in play there. Personally, I think I might lean Graham over Johnson ever so slightly, but can't knock that pick whatsoever. And then at 6, Raiders, they get Shadir Sanders. Obviously Deion's in the news a lot right now. Doesn't seem like Shadir is going to be making its way to Dallas. A lot of conspiracy theories about what the Cowboys could do there. I'm going to keep it into a pretty straightforward, realistic. I mean, who knows? Those conspiracy theories, so to speak, they may be onto something, and maybe we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I'm going to operate under the assumption that Deion, maybe he goes to Dallas, maybe stays in Colorado, but there's not going to be a Deion Shadir tag team, 1-2 punch here anywhere. But nevertheless, the Raiders have got to get a quarterback situation. So if the Browns or the Giants pass, Sanders falls right in their lap. A lot of rumblings that, there is a mutual appeal for both sides to one another. So can totally see this. We'll need to see who the, head coach is going to be. If it's Ben Johnson, man, it feels like that's starting to gain some steam. That would be fascinating. Especially then if not only do you get Ben Johnson, then he's okay with this pick. That would signal a huge vote of confidence for Shadir Sanders or Cam Ward if it played out, just reverse quarterback order here. That'd be really interesting. Obviously, a lot to still be figured out here for the Raiders, but the need for quarterback is undeniable. And if Sanders makes it here, it's going to be hard for the Raiders to pass, considering they've been the team now 2 years in a row, kind of left without a chair at the end of musical chairs. So I can totally see a world where they're like, yeah, it's not a great QB class, but we need one. Jets, they get Mason Graham. Again, in a lot of ways, you could switch Graham and Will Johnson. I think it still makes a lot of sense, but the Jets have been trying to figure out that other interior defensive line spot, like who could be that complement next to Quinnen Williams, and they have just been shuffling through guys. I would love to see Mason Graham and Quinnen Williams. I was hoping Graham would take a step forward. He was awesome last year. I was hoping this year would be kind of like Quinnen Williams last year at Bama. I don't know if it was quite that dominant, but it was still an awesome year. He's going to be a top 10 player on my board. Would love to see those two guys play off of one another too. I almost kind of think they work as nice complements to one another too. So like that a lot there for the Jets. Panthers, Jalen Walker. Yeah, he's going to be a guy that goes in the top 10 of my mocks moving forward. He's going to be, not to give away too much, but he's going to be at least a top 8 player on my board, if not top 6, probably player number 6, the way I look at it right now in my, on my big board. Yeah, and just the need for edge. At this point, Abdul Carter's not making it to 8. Unlikely that Will Johnson makes it to 8, but I could see that as a possibility. But in the world where those two are gone, Mason Graham's gone, I'm totally content with taking Jalen Walker here. He's my edge too, has been for a while now. Super explosive. Love the power and the aggressiveness this guy plays with. Good punch in his hands too. So yeah, I know he's this hybrid off-ball linebacker, half edge, half off-ball, but he's going to play edge at the next level full-time, and I think he's going to be super explosive, super disruptive, an absolute force to be reckoned with on the outside. And the Panthers just don't have a guy like that right now on the defensive line as a whole, really, other than Derek Brown, who, of course, missed all this season. Saints going Malachi Starks. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, and it might be a luxury option. I might agree with that here with Dane. It's a tough spot to be if you're New Orleans, right? You're picking the top 10. Your salary cap is stretched to its absolute limit, right? And they have so many holes. But it's hard to also pass up Malachi Starks, right? If you just look at it from a big board perspective, not a whole lot of guys that are going to be ranked higher than Malachi Starks at this point with the guys that are off the board, right? So draft best player available, ignore some position needs. or go address position needs and potentially hurt yourself because you're not drafting the best player in your eyes available to you. So it's a tricky spot. I can see where a lot of Saints fans don't love the idea of going safety, but I also think they could get younger and cheaper and better at that position, right? Like Honey Badger can't play forever. I think that other safety spot's been, leaving some to be desired, to say the least. But I could also see where, depending on how you like these corners, Will Johnson off the board, Travis Hunter off the board, it feels like a reach to me. But if you got a guy in mind, or maybe it's a trade down spot for New Orleans. I don't know if Dane's doing that yet, but maybe it's a team that looks to trade down so that way they can get that corner that they're looking for. Jalen Walker off the board, maybe they trade down and try to get a different defensive lineman. Options certainly there, but if they're going to stick and pick, it's hard. You're going to be hard pressed to find a more talented player available here. The Saints, it's just going to be, going to be tough to grade the pick in regards to like they have so many needs and safety just doesn't come with a whole lot of position value. So that's where it gets a little tricky here, but a really good player for a team that needs a lot of really good players added to that roster. Bears, Josh Simmons, man, I think this makes a ton of sense. Like Braxton Jones is a solid player for a 5th rounder, but whenever you have to add that tagline to it, it kind of makes you question, is he really worth starting? Plus, he's coming off an injury. Josh Simmons also coming off an injury, but before that, like Dane says, I think he was on his way to being OT1, especially with some question marks of, is Campbell a guard, is Banks a guard, things like that. But his movement skills, off of that ability to climb the second level, plays with good power, rock solid, and pass protection, great movement matching, mirroring ability, especially in his feet. Big fan of Josh Simmons. There's some things that still need to get cleaned up. He's not like a finished product by any stretch. Like the hand placement could definitely get better at the next level. He could probably add a little bit of muscle to his frame. Don't disagree with any of that. Again, it's not the best offensive tackle class. He's not like a finished product by any means, but the idea of slotting him in there at left tackle makes a whole lot of sense. And to me, it makes that offensive line a whole lot better. Then we get Armand Membu. Membu's climbing up my rankings, man. I've gotten to watch a lot more tape of him, and it's hard not to like what you see here. Interesting that Dane put the guard label there. He is 6'3", so I've seen some people say that, but I think the arm length looks fine. He's also a great mover too. So like personally for San Francisco, that wide zone, that's what Shanahan wants to do. You keep Membu right there at right tackle. His movement skills play totally in what they want to do, but also like a finisher. He's got that like I'm gonna play through the whistle and I'm gonna rub your face in the dirt. He's got like that type of headspace, that type of mentality. So love that. Love the attitude and kind of ferocity that kind of comes with that, especially as a guy opposite of Trent Williams, who also plays with that, like, I'm a finisher mentality. So love this a ton. If you haven't watched Membu, he's definitely a guy to get around to because he's an off the tackle. It's kind of shooting up boards for a lot of people in the draft community. And once you get to watch him, you'll understand why, right? Like good power, good movement skills, kind of a jack of all trades. And, wasn't on a lot of people's, preseason draft radars, maybe, especially for round 1 stuff, but the tape this year backs it up for why he's this high in Dane's mock. Luther Bird and the Cowboys think he's a really fun compliment to CeeDee Lamb, and with Ted McMillan off the board, totally fine with this. Running backs can be the question. A lot of Cowboys fans want Ashton Jeanty. I get it. But, the longer you look at that roster, the more you see, they need a running back. They need a lot of things, right? Like this, if Jalen Walker makes it here, that could be an interesting guy for this team too. Or you go in the, there's some guys in the second round that I think could fit this bill, but could they draft a different edge rusher here in the first round to replace Tank Lawrence? Free up some salary cap. I think that's a possibility as well. But here, if they go Burden to be, inside, outside, flexible guy, you're kind of moving him and CD kind of interchangeably from the slot to the outside. His yards after the catch, skill set allows you to have an easy button on offense. He's got field stretching speed. A lot to like with Luther Burden, and this is just a Cowboys offense that we know 88's great. Who else? Who else can step up and make some plays? And I think Luther Burden would take some pressure off of CD's shoulders for sure. Will Campbell, the Dolphins, offensive line for this team. Please, 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 please. Like, we have gone too long without them putting major investment into that position, and they put major investment in other positions of need. Don't get me wrong, but and I know Patrick Paul, second-round pick. Yeah, totally get it. But Will Campbell might be the best offensive lineman in this class, and that's the type of investment they haven't really made in the draft. They signed Teron Armstead a few years ago, best offensive tackle that had hit the market in quite some time, and he's worked out when he's healthy. Now we need to do a similar investment, get younger, get cheaper across the offensive line, and I think Will Campbell would totally be that. To me, more of a gap scheme guy than like a zone player, but if you're moving him inside, I think his movement skills play enough. So, but it would be interesting to see, the Shanahan disciple drafting a Will Campbell guy that, again, not a guy that can't move whatsoever, not only gap scheme. I would just prefer gap scheme personally for Will Campbell, but different fit here, different strokes for different folks, as they say. Colts, Tyler Warren, you're going to see this 1,000 times throughout draft season. So we'll skip past this, but it makes a ton of sense. Ballard likes size, speed, athletes. Warren is that at 6'6", 260, and he'll be a good tester and an absolute upgrade there in the pass catching core for a team that already has a lot of good receivers, but one more weapon for a developing quarterback is never a bad thing. Shamar Stewart ahead of Nick Scorton. That's going to be the thing I'm starting to keep my eyes on for mocks moving forward. It's tough. If you take away Purdue, Nick Scorton, I think Stewart was the better of the two A&M guys. But I think the last year at Purdue from Scorton is a better year of tape than I got from either one of the two, if you're taking their entire career into account. So it's kind of a tricky thing. Like one guy has the best single season, but I think from this last year, one guy was better than the other. So it's going to be interesting to see who people have ranked higher. I'm kind of leaning towards Stewart there. But there's definitely a little bit more work in progress. We'll also see what Nick Scorton comes in, weight-wise at Mobile. I could see a world where he drops down from 285, maybe looks a little more explosive and has a little bit more speed to his game. We'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But Shamar Stewart, you're getting an NFL-ready run defender with a lot of size, a lot of length, and a lot of power. Just needs to be better about finishing plays. But I also like this, too, because Matt Judon hasn't worked out. And the size and length that Stewart has is a really nice compliment to what Arnold Ebiketie doesn't have. But he wins with speed and finesse and bend, which is not necessarily something that is like the calling card of Shamar Stewart. So I think those two edge rushers fit well opposite each other and allows you to play mismatch against opposing tackles. Derek Harmon, first-round love here from Dane going to the Cardinals. They just have got to get better really on the interior of both sides of the ball, but specifically on the defensive line. They have just got to get some interior defensive line difference makers. I like the idea of Tyleik Williams. He's going to be, nose tackle at the next level. I think Kenneth Grant, nose tackle or 3-tech. I'd personally go with one of those two guys over, or even a Walter Nolan. I'm a big Walter Nolan guy. I'd go with Nolan over Harmon, but, like Dane says here, nobody had more pressures this year in college football than Derek Harmon. So totally get it. He had a really productive season. I just don't love the tape quite as much as others, but there's definitely traits that translate to the next level. And you love to see a guy that can go from one school to the next and take that huge leap forward with it, right? Like a new change in scenery sometimes is what unlocks a player. That plus, I lost at least 10 pounds coming into the season, looks more explosive for it. So it's going to be interesting to see what other work to his body, is done before he gets to the next level. Bengals, Michael Williams. This is an interesting one. It's just kind of giving me, I don't know necessarily if this is a fair comparison just because, and it's really not, but they already drafted Myles Murphy. Don't they have enough work in progress, in play on that defensive line? A guy that came out of college, good run defender, good athlete, kind of checks a lot of those boxes, moldable ball of clay, kind of the same spot we're at with Michael Williams. Williams, I had to go back and double check my grade on Myles Murphy, but Williams probably the better prospect of those two, but it feels like you already done this. So, that part of me is a little trepidatious to go and get another project defensive lineman, especially considering they just drafted a project offensive tackle last year and, wasn't the best first year. So I'm kind of questioning right now Cincy's ability to take these, moldable ball of clays and, mold them into the ball of clay that they would like. But nevertheless, just like position need, I think this makes a lot of sense. You can move him inside when it's passing down situations. He's got the size and the length to do that. He's going to test great. He's going to have all the measurables you want. Just a guy that missed some time this year and just ultimately throughout his college tenure wasn't super productive. And edge tends to be a position where the production translates to the next level. So it's going to be a big part of his profile. And, it's going to rub some people the wrong way. Some people are going to ignore it, not really care about it. So he's going to be a fun conversation about the rest of the draft season. I don't necessarily love the fit with the Bengals. I'd rather see him go to Philly, but, we're here at pick 17 and the Bengals are on the clock. I can't force Michael Williams to stay on the board any longer than a team deems him to be. So I'm fine with it. But interesting to see how that would work with, Myles Murphy already there and still waiting to see the returns on that pick. Kelvin Banks, you see off the tackle / guard. Again, some people will see him and just think he's a little squatty and that he should move inside. I'm willing to give him the shot at tackle. To me, he's too good of a pass protector to move inside. And right now, I think he's still my OT1. It's going to be close. Him and Armand Mimbu, there's some guys giving him a good run for his money. Not ready to make a final decision, of course. But I think the pass protection side is there. But, to me, Seattle's already got that left tackle spot figured out. So the question would be here, do you move him inside to play left guard? And if you truly see him as a guard, that makes some sense. Or are you asking Kelvin Banks to flip over to the right side? And ultimately, that's a conversation that would have to be had with the prospect. I can't have it with you here on this, reaction to Dane Brugler's mock. So, TBD on that. But I think either side could work. It just comes down to, do you think Kelvin Banks can flip over to the right side and handle that assignment? To me here, the easier assumption to make would probably be that he slides over and plays left guard instead. So going to be really interesting to see. Can't wait to get the arm length measurement once we get to the combine. That will be a huge factor into that evaluation, of course. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, James Pierce Jr. I think Trevor Sickman had a great tweet. He's obviously a Bucs fan, and he pretty much laid it out right after the Bucs loss, right? Listed a couple corners, listed a couple edge rushers. That's what Tampa Bay's got to be looking at in the first round. And I mean, he's on the money, right? They have got to find more edge rush production from guys not named Kalijah Cansey. And I think James Pierce Jr., if he does declare, right, he hasn't declared yet. We have the hard deadline on Friday the 24th. We'll see. That is one of those names you would have assumed already had declared by now. But the fact that he hasn't makes you a little trepidatious. That being said, of course, I'm recording this, and I'm going to check my phone when we're done, and he already declared. But timestamp 5:51 on Wednesday. Hasn't declared yet. But if he does, this makes a lot of sense. I think he's a good compliment to the guys they currently have on that roster. Maybe a little bit light to have on the same D-line as a Kalijah Cansey, one guy on the inside, one guy on the outside. But other than that, like when it comes to get to the quarterback, pass rush juice, James Pierce Jr., no questions about his game there. Love the first step, love the bend. Would be a huge shot in the arm for that Bucs pass rush. Broncos, Ashton Jeanty. Same conversation we have every year with the super talented, blue chip type of running back, which I do think Jeanty is a blue chip guy. May not be Saquon or Bijan for me, but he's in that air. The question is always going to be position value. Where does he go? And in Dane's mock here, Dallas passes on him in 12, and I saw him tweeting about it. Not a whole lot of super running back needy teams, right? Like teams that are going to absolutely forego other positions of need / best player available to go get Ashton Jeanty, which, if you're just going solely BPA and taking position value out of the equation, Jeanty's probably off the board by now. That being said, you have to factor position value and a lot of other really good players in this draft at higher position values. So you get to the Denver Broncos. Then, part of me was like, this would be kind of fun. I kind of love it. Him running behind Quinn Miners, sign me up. I want to see it. The other side of me is Sean Payton is just a running back by committee dude. And it's so, James Palmer, I think, had a tweet today literally saying as much for their plans in the future. And it's it's just always who Sean Payton's been. So part of me that makes me not like this landing spot because of that, because I want to see as much as any running back can in this, NFL, not really that type of league anymore, but I would love to see Jeanty be a bell cow as much as possible. Right. So part of that makes me be don't love the Broncos fit, but I could totally see a world where they're hey, Javonte, appreciate it. You haven't been the same since we drafted you and you got hurt, basically. So replace Javonte Williams touches with Ashton Jeanty. To me, that's probably an upgrade at this point. Certainly at this point, I would say that's an upgrade. So it makes some sense, but it kind of feels if you're just going to go running back by committee, are you really getting that much more out of the squeeze, right? You're getting that much more juice. Is it really worth it? So that would be my immediate question. Pittsburgh Steelers and Emeka Egbuka. This is a fit that I've been trying to make in my mocks happen as a Steelers fan, but I haven't been able to do it just because receivers have been falling down the board a little bit too much in my mocks. But I would love this. This is a perfect compliment for George Pickens. I think the Steelers would be wise to move on from Arthur Smith, and they just got to revolutionize. They cannot be a team with I think it was 49%, three receiver sets. They have got to find a higher percentage of, sets with three receivers out there. We have just got to modernize. We've got to take a step forward. Days of the 2 tight end, ground and pound, 5 yards and a, pound of dust, all that sort of stuff. We left it. I'm ready to see Mike Tomlin and co. take that step forward. So we'd like to see them change offensive coordinators. And if they do, hopefully that means that there's a world where not only can we get a first-round pick like Emeka Egbuka on the field, but also Roman Wilson, who you just drafted in the 3rd round last year. And I don't think Egbuka steps on Roman Wilson's toes. I don't think he steps on George Pickens' toes. To me, I see 3 different receivers who can do 3 different things, which is huge. Trying to diversify the portfolio of that offense. The tough part about going receiver first round is holy cow, did you see the Steelers secondary this year? JPJ comes with high variance, and everyone else in that secondary is not good. Everyone else is not good. Other than Minka Fitzpatrick. Minka Fitzpatrick's a dog. But every other corner on that roster is just not good. So would like to see them go there. There's definitely some interior defensive linemen, too, that can make some sense as Cam Hayward replacements. Do you want to start looking at that here? So other options on the table. It's just a team that has a lot of holes, a lot of needs, and it feels like the same position groups we talk about every year for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And they just don't always get the chance to address them, which, that's the way of the world. Chargers, Colston Loveland. So another tight end here in the first round. Obviously you get the Harbaugh connection. That's an easy one. But, if you watch that Will Dissly pick 6, from that moment on, it was it's going to be hard for people who make mock drafts. And if they have a firm memory of that play, it's going to be hard for them not to go tight end here in the first 2 rounds. I do think this is a deep tight end class. So in a lot of ways, could you wait for Gunnar Helm in the next round or potentially even the 3rd round? I think that's an option they should explore because I also think, defensive line could use some overhaul depending on what happens with Bosa and Mack. Plus, the interior could just naturally use a guy. Corner could be a spot you're looking to add. Receiver, depending on what they do in free agency. Other options should be evaluated here versus tight end. Again, a position that doesn't come with a super high position value. So it warrants a conversation. That being said, it makes a lot of sense. Harbaugh, Michigan connection, and they've just got to get better at that position. And any pass catcher you can put around Justin Herbert would go a long way to elevating the ceiling and the floor, really, of that offense. Green Bay Packers, Tyreek Williams. I cannot believe I haven't had this happen yet. I would love this. I would absolutely love this. I have become kind of a Tyreek Williams stan over the course of the last month or so, I feel like. Big fan of his game. You're just going to be hard-pressed to find someone as disruptive as him, especially against the run. But, man, he sheds against the pass, too. Like, it's just they got a lot of really good pass rushers that are also getting the quarterback simultaneously. And he's also like a big guy. He's not going to, it's just like some reps from Vita Vea pass rushing. You're like, really anything there. Sometimes that'll happen with Tyreek, but then his best reps as a pass rusher, you're like, okay, yeah, whoa, look out. That guy moving that way, it's a lot of fun. So consistency going to be, a big question mark. Can you get that out of him at the next level on a consistent passing, down in, down out basis? But he's going to be awesome against the run. And I actually think, Devontae Wyatt wasn't the biggest, 3-tech type of defensive tackle coming out. I do almost wonder if Tyreek Williams kind of hides that a little bit too for Devontae Wyatt. So I could see a world where they're actually a nice 1-2 combo next to each other. Kenny Clark getting up there in age. I think it's probably the point where it's like, hey, this guy should be just like a designated pass rusher type for us. I also think edge is in play here too, right? Like Rashawn Gary, it's been rough this year. Lucas Van Ness, it hasn't come together yet, so edge is also a spot I would be looking at here from the Green Bay Packers. But I really like the idea of Devontae Wyatt, Tyreek Williams, the interior duo of the future. Big fan of that. Caleb Johnson, another running back here in the first round. Not Amari and Hampton. He's my RB2. Caleb Johnson, my RB3. But I appreciate Dane sticking to his guns. Caleb Johnson, I think he could fit in gap or zone, but I would really love to see the Vikings add one of these, one-cut running backs in this year's class, whether it's Johnson here in the first round, or it's Trayvon Henderson in the second, or, Quinshon Judkins even in that range, or someone later, right? Like even like a Devin Neal. Like I think that could be a lot of fun. Do you think this is a good year for the Vikings to add to that room, take touches away from Akers, get someone else in the mix? They decide Caleb Johnson's the guy to do it with round one. Okay. I'm not normally a huge fan of drafting running backs round one, especially if they're not blue chippers, which Johnson, Hampton, they're close to great running back prospects, but not blue chippers for me. So that's going to be part of where my struggle comes from, especially for a team that like needs defensive line, interior defensive line specifically. They got a ton of dudes at corner hitting the market. So that's going to be hard pressed to ignore. And also I think that interior offensive line could also use some help here. So this is kind of the part of the draft where you could start looking at the value of those guys and are they the best player available. But I'm not knocking the Caleb Johnson, pick here. It's definitely different, something I haven't seen. I appreciate, and I tip my hat to Dane for doing that. And, next pick, Tyler Booker. Like, could Tyler Booker be the guy for, the Minnesota Vikings? I think that can make a lot of sense. Tyler Booker, man, really fun player, wide, strong base. Love the anchor and pass pro, but like Bama's not afraid to pull him and get him out in space and have him lead the way too. So you're talking about a big, hefty offensive lineman, but a guy with enough movement skills too to factor into either blocking scheme. And assuming Bobby Slowick's back, which, I think give him one more year. Give him one more year as the OC. It's going to be, Shanahan disciple, zone, wide zone. I think Booker's going to be just fine, but he absolutely gives you that mauling mentality and that finishing ability that you see all over his tape at Bama, right? And I think granted, this new coaching staff and Slowick, they came in after Kenyon Green had been drafted, if my memory serves. But even if they didn't, like the fact that they're still playing him and he's never been like the best mover, I think it's because they're like, hey, this guy's, especially in his college shape, but like he's got that gap, finishing power mentality, and we kind of want that. Or he's just who they currently have on the roster, and that's who they currently think is the best of, quote unquote, a bad situation. That's totally fair. But I'm totally fine with the idea of Tyler Booker in Kenyon Green now. I'm actually really in support of that. And then Tyvis Howard goes back to right tackle. Had some good feedback from Texans fans in the last mock that we put up, thinking that he's a better right tackle. I will go with yours. I will go with that analysis here. So I think this ultimately kind of plays out the cards the best way possible for the Houston Texans. Rams, Josh Connerly Jr., a lot better as a pass protector this year, so they can get better against the run. And ultimately, he's 315 pounds. We add about 10 pounds of muscle to that could go a long way in helping him, again, finish plays in the run game, be a finisher, be a mauler. Also, it would help in pass pro just with that anchor. But he held up, again, really well this year in pass protection. So I'm intrigued by this fit. Joe Noteboom, Alaric Jackson, they've had some guys that have had moments, had some good games, had some good stretches, but ultimately it always kind of comes back to the same conclusion that, yeah, those guys aren't franchise dudes, though. Like, they can be good in a pinch, but, and you always get that but, and then you start looking at the next, draft class or who is the free agent. So I like the idea of adding this kind of pass protecting specialist offensive tackle who still has some work to be done, but the Rams have also been a really good spot at drafting and developing guys, and I would like to see them work with a multiple ball of clay like Josh Connerly, who's already taken steps in the right direction. He's only going to be 21, I think, when he's drafted. So multiple ball of clay, one of the younger tackles in this class, and I feel like that would be a good landing spot for him, stay on the West Coast, but also a good team for him to go to be able to take those next steps forward that he needs to take. Mike Green to the Commanders. I love this fit. Edge, definitely, absolutely. I'm in full support of it here for the Commanders. I also think corner should be in play as they should try to find a complement opposite of Marshawn Lattimore for next season. But Green in a rotation with, like Dane lists off here, Dorrance Armstrong, Dante Fowler. I love it. You're probably using Green as like a DPR, pass rush specialist early on in his career while you have those guys who are more suited to play on rundowns. But, man, Mike Green has a ton of power in that first step, super explosive, and that kind of generates the power. And, I think against Ohio State, I don't think he necessarily was awesome against the run, but he was kind of like a net neutral, right? Like, I don't think he was necessarily blowing up plays. He had one play maybe where he made a nice little stop, kind of dove inside, really won with athleticism and, enough length. But, that's not going to happen but so many times in a game. So, like, a net neutral run defender, against Ohio State, which that's more akin to NFL competition than Louisiana Monroe, Southern Miss, things of that nature. So, that being said, really curious to see how teams view him as a run defender at the next level. I think Washington's got the infrastructure to kind of hide that early on, though, and then eventually make him a full-time starter. Donovan Jackson, man, as much as I like Tyler Booker, Donovan Jackson, hard-pressed for me to not have him as interior offensive line, number one in this class, other than Will Campbell, if I do make the assessment that he's a guard. But Donovan Jackson is going to be not too far behind him, man. I've been a big fan of his game for a while now. He was on my way too early rankings before last draft. He was on my way too early rankings out of this draft. Big fan of Donovan Jackson, 5-star recruit. Love the athleticism. Now the willingness to go kick out and play left tackle and more than holding up. He's only allowed one pressure all of the college football playoff, and that one pressure was against James Pierce Jr. So, this guy has been able to, with a huge change in assignment, huge change in role, step up and play in the biggest games of his schedule, which is huge, right? So love the athleticism, love the power, and now you're starting to see guard tackle flexibility. That's going to boost his draft stock a lot. Then we get to the Bills, Siobhan Ravel. Love that Dane mentioned here. If he was healthy, he's a top 15 pick. Love the size, love the ball skills, love the athleticism. Coming from a smaller school, but he stands out immediately as soon as you load up the tape that, like, this guy does not belong at this level of competition. So definitely a guy that should be playing on Sundays in my opinion. Obviously, no new, only a couple games to add to this year's tape and what you can watch. Pick six and then, tears his ACL in the same game, which is tough. But nevertheless, I think the Bills would be wise to add to that corner room. Rasul Douglas getting up there in age. Would love to see the size, speed, and athleticism plus the ball skills play in that zone-heavy defense there in Buffalo. JT Tuimoloau, I know Dane's more of a JTT guy than Jack Sawyer. That's totally fine. I'm more of a Sawyer guy myself, but I like Tyleek the most of the bunch. Good to see the Dane kind of in agreement there with me. I think Tuimoloau, I've mocked him in the second round to the Eagles a ton. I think this is a great Brandon Graham replacement. Him or Sawyer here, right? Like, they both bring that power profile. I think Sawyer is a slightly better athlete than Tuimoloau, but Tuimoloau is going to have longer arms. He's 275 pounds. So there's things in his profile that are better to Sawyer's than Sawyer's to JTT. It's just going to come down to which guy you personally think is more your flavor that you're looking for. JTT is a Brandon Graham replacement. I'm fully on board for the Eagles doing just that. Chiefs adding Kenneth Grant would be awesome, especially as Chris Jones can move across the D-line. Kenneth Grant can do the same thing, 1 or 3 tech. So wherever you're moving Chris Jones, Kenneth Grant can kind of fit into that picture. NFL-ready run defender and a really freaky athlete at his size, 340 pounds. And you see reps where it's like almost like a ghost rush, right? Where it's like, whoa, a guy in 340 should not be setting up offensive linemen, getting them on the back of their heels just for you to kind of go around them. Like, no one on the interior should be that athletic. But Kenneth Grant, number 2 in Bruce Feldman's freak list, he is that level of an athlete. So I would love to see this, and he's going to go first round because of what he is as a run defender, plus the upside there as a pass rusher. And then we get Nick Scorton. So he's not shut out of the first round, but he just goes a lot later than Shamar Stewart. And again, I'm kind of leaning in that direction. Stuff that 2023 Purdue tape for Scorton is awesome. Feels like he just has a little bit more speed, a little bit more agility, just overall athleticism, really. I think he's playing at a lighter weight, too. So really interested to see what he looks like at the Senior Bowl and what that weight is and how that correlates to the nimbleness, first step get off, second gear, can he get around that, all that sort of stuff. Nevertheless, edge for the Detroit Lions, back into the first round makes a ton of sense. We've started to see that position start to wither away over the course of the season, starting with Aiden Hutchinson, and they put a lot of eggs in that basket to try to maintain a high level of play and just continue to battle the injury bug. And I could totally see where almost like corner last year, this team was like, we're not going to let this position cost us a Super Bowl. I don't know if they're going to double up first and second round picks like they did the corner last year, but definitely first round, as long as there's a guy they like there. It's a deep defensive line class. hard pressed to not think that there's going to be a BPA, type of look at defensive linemen at where they're at 30, 31, 32, assuming. But yeah, I like the idea of Nick Scorton complimenting Aiden Hutchinson. Absolutely. Hutchinson didn't have the longest arms, kind of went to that spin move, first step get off, a little bit of bend in there. And then you get Scorton, who, let's just look at his A&M profile, 285 pounds, wins with a bull rush, wins with arm length. Okay, that's a nice 1-2 punch there. And then you have some nice complementary rushers you can bring in passing situations. So I like the fit a ton. Again, still a lot to be seen there from Nick Scorton, specifically once we go down to Mobile. We'll fly a little bit quicker here in the second round of the mock. Browns go off to tackle Ariante Ursary. I think this makes a lot of sense. Fluid mover, good fit for the zone scheme. He's 320 pounds, but he moves really well for that size. So he's actually a really nice fit for Coach Stefanski's offense. Giants take Jalen Milroe. So we had a question, do the Browns take a quarterback? Do the Giants? Seems like the Browns, in Dane's mind, maybe they'll pass on that, go with the Kirk Cousins route, reassess in 2026. But the Giants, so they get Travis Hunter in the first round and Jalen Milroe in the second. He's going to be a polarizing prospect. Some people are going to see him right away as a bust. Some people are going to say, hey, there's so much upside. He's got to go first round. To me, he's in that day 2 mix, right? Like Drew Lock went and picked 38 or 40, or if my memory serves. That makes, in and around that general area makes sense. A lot of work to be done for Jalen Milroe. He may boost his stock at the Senior Bowl, get himself back in that first round mix. But as I look at him right now, he's the guy with the skill set I want to draft from this class, but also the guy that comes with the most homework from this class. So it's twofold for sure. Titans Jack Sawyer, to me, he's a first round guy, but yeah, man, if the Titans can get instead of going Carter 1 free agent quarterback route, right? We're doing the inverse here. We're going quarterback at 1, and we're going to draft that edge rusher we still need later on. Would love the idea of a Jack Sawyer ad. Still waiting to see how the coaching, if they're going to make any changes on the defensive side. I don't think so. But obviously a GM search, that might give us an idea of what type of prospects maybe they lean towards, what their profile, who's their type, and all that sort of stuff. So TBD on like who's the edge rusher to fit that GM's type. But I would love to see Jack Sawyer plus Harold Landry. I think that boosts that edge group a good bit. Jonas Savaiinaea here as guard, as Dane lists off. I do think that interior offensive line for the Jags could get a whole lot better. Brandon Sheriff can't play forever. I could totally see where Savaiinaea just steps right in and ultimately replaces Sheriff at that right guard spot. Raiders, Marion Hampton. I mean, you get Shadir Sanders and Marion Hampton. My QB2, my RB2. Raiders fans, rejoice. Dane Brugler has done you a favor. That'd be an awesome first and second round haul there for Las Vegas, especially without having to move up. And then the Patriots go Cameron Williams. So you got the best of both worlds, right? You get this developmental tackle who has 14 penalties on the year because he is raw and he just has a hard time anticipating. And if he's beat, he's just going to grab you. Shades of J.C. Latham a couple of years ago. Not this last year at Bama. I think he got a little bit better at it. But the year before that, very handsy, a lot of penalty calls against him. But you see great movement skills, a ton of power. He wants to rub your face in the dirt. Like a lot of things to love there. Buildable blocks, just got to clean it up, and you plug him in at right tackle pretty much right away for the New England Patriots. Slide Michael Onwenu into guard. You got a receiver at the top of the first round. I think Dane Brugler did the New England Patriots a big favor here. Wyatt Milan, them to Chicago, to me, he's he should go in the first round. I think he definitely earned it. You see guard center, right? Like there's a lot of people who don't see him as a tackle. I can totally understand that. We'll see what the arm length looks like, but also just like the power in his profile. He's not necessarily the biggest, strongest guy. But I do love him in a zone blocking scheme. So we'll see what happens with Chicago, who they bring in, who's going to be calling the plays. Is it gap? Is it zone? Yada, yada, yada. But the idea of plugging him in at left guard sounds super appealing to me. Absolutely here for it if you're a Bears fan. And this is, on the heels of drafting Josh Simmons at 10 overall. So it'd be like Josh Simmons at left tackle, Wyatt Milam at left guard, potentially center here too, which I haven't heard a whole lot of center chat for or talk around Milam. So that's kind of interesting in and of itself. He'll get the chance to prove what he can do at the Senior Bowl. And I've seen some clips of him talking about he wants to showcase versatility. Really interested to see if he gets any center reps there and what he looks like, because that might be a nice little nugget that Dane's kind of planting a seed for us to look at. New Orleans Saints, Matthew Golden, guy that I'm going to have to go back and check out those the college football playoff games, because he was awesome just watching the broadcast film. Now I got to dive into the All-22. Because really, since the Isaiah Bond injuries, mid to late season, Matthew Golden took over as receiver 1 for this team, and that's why he's coming off the board before Isaiah Bond. He really was the better receiver. Sharp right runner, like the size, love the ability to go up and win in the air, got good hands. Lots to like there. Not done with the final eval, though. So we'll see where he lands. Top 40, top 50, top 60 player. I do think he's going to be somewhere in that second round mix for me. Chicago Bears, Landon Jackson. Love the size, love the arm length, love the power he can play with. Totally fits in with, that if the Bears are going to stick in like 4-3 base, which they had with Eberflus, which, nickel's really the new base, which even just taking to that, the size and length that if you're just going to play nickel as your base, with how good of a run defender Montez Sweat is and Landon Jackson at the other edge spot, yeah, that's how you can continue to play nickel. That's how you can continue to play two high sets if they do want to do that. We'll see what the DC situation is. But just talking in a vacuum here, you get run defenders like that on the edge. Plus, obviously, you need some help on the interior, no doubt about it. That's how you can sit in those too high looks and give quarterbacks issues and make them dink and dunk their way down the field. It's when you start giving up, big run plays that, okay, now we got to put a safety in the box. Okay, now there's one-on-one opportunities on the outside. Now we're getting beaten in the air. That's when it becomes a slippery slope. So I really like Landon Jackson plus Montez Sweat as the edge tandem for Chicago. Nick Emmanwori, I do think the Jets can get better at safety, specifically box safety. So I actually do like that a good bit. He can also just kind of play some linebacker for you, which they've had success with, turning some safeties into linebackers. So I am totally fine with that. And Emmanwori made himself a lot of money this year at South Carolina, and a guy that I believe just accepted a Senior Bowl invite. Yeah. We talked about him in, I believe we did in the Senior Bowl. So many names to keep up with. I may be making that one up. Walter Nolan comes off the board, in my opinion, way too late. But the fit here would be undeniable. I've heard some rumblings that the 49ers were likely to move on from Javon Hargrave. We'll see. That's just, just some speculation. And, he's got a big cap number, so definitely can make some sense coming off a big injury. If they move on from him, Walter Nolan, the pass rush side of what they're getting out of Hargrave, absolutely see it. And plus, Hargrave's kind of alternated throughout his career. He's been really good run defender at points, maybe not so much as a pass rusher, kind of in Pittsburgh. Goes to Philly, becomes this insane pass rusher. Not their best run defender. They had other guys to do that. And then it's kind of been more of that in San Francisco. Really nice pass rusher. Not really focused maybe as much. Stopping the run. Nolan's awesome against the run. That is one of the things that stands out the most. And he does it consistently with quicks, right? He's just shooting gaps. And he's doing it at 305, 310 pounds, right? So he's not Clyde Chansey, 280, slipping through there. He's got prototypical size and weight, and he's got power to boast with that first step quickness and agility too. So I'm a big Walter Nolan guy. I think he should go in the first round. This would be the perfect way to replace Javon Hargrave if they do decide to move on from him. And if they don't, oh my God, that's an insane 1-2 punch on the inside. Trevion Henderson to the Cowboys, and this is kind of getting back to what we said earlier. Yes, running back's a need. They got a lot of needs, though. Could you wait till the second round and get another great option like Trevion Henderson? A lot of ways feels like you're gaining a lot of what you lost to Tony Pollard. Nice natural pass catcher, great vision when he's out wide in space, good zone blocking fit, one cut ability, long speed, going to be one of the better 40 times in this class overall, but specifically for the running backs. Yeah, hard not to knock. So, yeah, Cowboys fans, let me know. No Gene T in the first round, but you get Burden and Henderson. I think that makes it, manageable, right? You can swallow the no Ashton Jinty pill now. Then we get to the Colts. Azariah Thomas. Love the size, speed. Florida State's kind of become this man corner factory in a lot of ways. And I do think there's a lot to like there from Thomas, but good athlete, good movement and speed, or good mover in space as well. Obviously, Gus Bradley gone, so I am interested to see what the defensive scheme changes entailed. Right, less cover three, almost certainly, because it's not going to be Gus Bradley, but also more man. How much man versus what they were doing? And also what does it mean for Juju Brents, Jalen Jones, guys who I thought were really nice cover three fits, specifically Jalen Jones, they got in the 7th round. What does it mean for those guys, and how does Azariah Thomas fit in that mix? And then Jahdae Barron. Now, that's a little surprising to me. Jahdae Barron, to me, is a first-round guy. Can play some safety, can play some slot, play outside. You name it, he can do it. So, interesting to see him fall this far, but I would love to see him play nickel specifically for the Falcons. I would love to see him getting his nose involved in as many plays as possible. This guy is just a playmaker, willing tackler, hard hitter, wants to find the football, will make plays on the football both in the air and on the ground. So, yeah, I am absolutely for it. I think he should go higher than this. But draft haul of Shamar Stewart plus Jahdae Barron, hard pressed to be fired up. If you're a Falcons fan, that's as close to ideal to me as you're going to get. Corner and edge, sign me up for it. Prince Uman Mielen, I think he could sneak into the back round of the first round, back end of the first round, I should say. But just an absolute pass rush winner. And now I love that Dane's doubling down on some of these position groups. Right? We're going double offensive line for the Bears. We're going double defensive line for the Cardinals. And now you can imagine, a kind of three-headed monster, so to speak. Throw in B.J. Ojulari, a four-headed, monster. Prince Uman Mielen with Darius Robinson, who can fold inside, play outside on early downs, inside on passing situations, plus the defensive tackle that they took in the first round. And then B.J. Ojulari, who's currently, on the roster coming off an injury. So, and Dennis Gardeck, throw him in the mix. He was super productive this year. So, yeah, absolutely. Sign me up for this. I'm completely and utterly here for it. Derek Harmon, Uman Mielen, I'm totally cool with doubling down on defensive line. Throw him in with Darius Robinson, who you can mix and move around. And then, a couple of, pass rush specialists in Gardeck and Ojulari. I think this team just needs more pass rush, and emphasizing with both picks is not out of the realm of possibility. So I really appreciate Dane doing that. Dolphins go Harold Fannin Jr. He's going to be a good athlete. 230 pounds isn't for everyone, but They just had so much success with Jonnu Smith. He's going to get a ton of comps to Jonnu Smith. You can see a world where they let Jonnu walk and just let Harold Fannin step into that role. And you're going to be hard-pressed to find tight ends with as much college production as Harold Fannin. Played out wide, played in the slot, played H-back, played off the line of scrimmage, on the line of scrimmage. I think he's just good enough as a blocker, especially in this wide zone scheme, that he'll be just fine as an every down starter, can play in line. So, yeah, I actually really like that fit. And he's going to get those Jonnu Smith comps. So, this one makes a whole lot of sense to me. Marcus Imbo to the Bengals. You see off the tackle or guard. To me, I'm seeing guard center for Imbo. And I really like him. Yeah, you play him at left guard. That left guard spot has been a troublesome, headache for the Bengals for the last 3 years now. Cordell Volson hasn't worked out. They've tried some other guys and just has not gotten any better. Plug and play Marcus Imbo right there at that left guard spot. You can also play him at right guard, right? He's playing right tackle for Purdue. So if you want to keep him on that side of the line, totally fine with that. And then you're sliding over one of those, veterans from the right side to the left side. I think that works as well. Seattle Seahawks, Deion Walker. That's interesting because Leonard Williams coming off a big, quote unquote career year, if you want to say. And then Byron Murphy, top 10 pick, last year, top half of the first round pick. Should have gone to the top 10 in my opinion, but top half of the first round selection for this team. Where does Deion Walker fit in the mix? He has a nice little compliment for those two guys because Leonard Williams, you can move around. Byron Murphy, I think he's great against the pass and the run, but he just doesn't carry the same mass that someone at 367 pounds like Deion Walker can. So interesting. Don't necessarily see the cleanest pathway to the field for him unless they're moving on from Leonard Williams sooner than I'm expecting. But I'm still in on Deion Walker. I think I'm totally fine with him going top 50. Like, he's a really good athlete for that size. Awesome against the run already. It just comes down to, can you get anything out of him as a pass rusher the next level? Or is he just, not there? He's not going to be that type of guy. He's just going to lean forward, eat up space, clog the middle, be a good run defender. That's the TBD on Deion Walker. I've actually, it's funny. Next pick, Mason Taylor to the Broncos. I've had him go to the Seahawks on a ton of my mock, but the Broncos here, undeniable fit. If they don't go tight end first round, I would actually love this fit. Him or Gunnar Helm. I like it a ton there for the Broncos. They can definitely get better at tight end. I think they're figuring out that receiver room, who fits into what role. I think adding a tight end is, taking that offense to the next level. And plus, they got Gene T at 20. How could you not love that? Steelers, Maxwell Hairston. The more I watch Hairston, the more I really want him to be a Steeler. So I won't drone on this too long because I don't want to be too homer here. But good size, like the athleticism, love the closing speed, willing tackler, good ball skills to go with it. And he came back from an injury against Georgia. And, I want to see how much better he looks the further along. And he's going to be at the Senior Bowl too. So I really want to see, if he's 100% healthy now versus what he was then, playing, almost certainly not at 100%, but playing in big games. What does he look like now? And this could be a guy that steals the show at the Senior Bowl, depending on how he fares in those one-on-ones. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Carson Schwessinger, one of the Senior Bowl guys I talked about in the last episode of the pod. Super excited to see. He's on my top 6 most excited to see at the Senior Bowl. Love the change of direction skills, the ability to attack downhill. Really nice athlete. 6'2", 225. It's a little light, but it's just what linebackers look like nowadays. And for the Buccaneers, you've got to find a guy to, one, play complementary football next to Levante David, but also a guy to have Levante David pass the torch to. And I really like Schwessinger for the Bucs there at 53. Jordan Burch, the Packers. Cool with this. And we talked about interior defensive line. They could also go edge. Here it is. I do think this is a position where they could certainly put some eggs into this basket. I'd be fine with Burch. Or the guy that comes off the board next, Josiah Stewart, another Michigan guy going to the Chargers. I wonder if Dane meant to do that. I don't think he would. I don't think he did it intentionally. I really don't. But this, if you're going to lose Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and you're looking for some juice, Josiah Stewart's got all the juice, right? He might be a little small, might be a little light to play on rundowns, but when it comes to first step, bend, oh man, this guy has got it in that regard. One of the best in this class, especially with that first step off the line of scrimmage, man. Super explosive athlete. And yeah, again, maybe he's just a DPR guy right away, but if the Chargers lose one of Bosa or Mack, I think that's just fine for Josiah Stewart to step into that role right away. You still have Tuli Tuipulotu in the mix too. So you're really just kind of looking for that third down, pin his ears back, go get the quarterback type. Josiah Stewart fits that to a T. Donovan Ezeraku, the next pick, yeah, defensive line. You're going to hear a ton of these guys coming off the board in the first 64 picks, no doubt about it. Bills, Donovan Ezeraku, I love this. They already worked magic with, Ezeraku's not quite as, long and doesn't have quite the arm length of Greg Rousseau. He's not 6'7" with that arm length, but 6'2" with some crazy dangly arms, man. And I would love to see if they could work that same magic they did with Rousseau with Ezeraku. So yeah, I like this a ton. Question marks about what Von Miller is going to be. Is he going to be on the roster next year? Big cap hit. Could totally see a world where they move on from him. Ezeraku inserted into that role. Sign me up for that. Carolina, Alfred Collins. I do think they could use a nice little run defender as a complement next to Derek Brown, who's also a great run defender, but Never hurts to have two of those guys plug in the middle. Love the first step, get off. Love, he plays like he's 320 pounds, stout against the run, sheds blocks really well. And anything you get out of him, especially at this spot in the draft, anything you get out of him as a pass rusher, it's just a bonus. Houston Texans, Trey Harris. Now, this is fun. Question marks are going to be like, how much of Tank Dell can he be after another knee injury, right? In a 12-month span, 2 major knee injuries and, being shot. Like, we might have to just come to terms with Tank Dell might not be the same guy that he was when they first drafted him and when he first busted on the scene as this awesome rookie. I'm hoping that he is, though. Like, I'm hoping I'm wrong on that, and I'm hoping that he gets back to full Tank Dell because he's just #fun to watch. One of my favorite players in the league. My receiver 6 that year. Nobody wants Tank Dell to succeed more than me. But Trey Harris is that guy who could be just an absolute big size, speed, vertical threat in his offense. Frees up Nico Collins to do a little bit of whatever. Honestly, more slot reps for Nico Collins. Take advantage of how good of a route runner he is. Sign me up for that. It's an intriguing name. I haven't really thought about it. Honestly, like there's a few other receivers I might have gone to first, right? Like because Tank Dell can play outside. Assuming Diggs is not coming back, could you go Xavier Restrepo, get that sharp route running type from the slot? I think that's possible. So other receivers would have come to mind before this. Honestly, even like a route runner, maybe a little early for me, more of a third-round guy, but like a Ricky White, that could be your guy to replace a Stephon Diggs. I think that's interesting. He could be a slot only the next level, depending on your thoughts on him. So yeah, Trey Harris wouldn't have been the receiver I immediately gravitated towards, but I don't hate that fit whatsoever for the Texans. Ravens, Jahad Campbell. Yeah, this feels like a Ravens type of pick. Wow, this is actually kind of scary for me to think about as a Steelers fan. But yeah, linebacker or edge. Honestly, I think a lot of his better reps are as a pass rusher, doing it a lot from the inside. He also does some reps from doing it from the edge spot too, so I'm fine with that. But he does possess really nice sideline to sideline ability, and he's great against the run too, crashing downhill. Good understanding and fluidity in zone coverage as well. So he's one where I'm fine playing him at off-ball linebacker. Honestly, right now, he's still my off-ball linebacker 1. Want to see more of Schwarzenegger at the Senior Bowl. Maybe I'll flip those two off-ball linebacker 1 and 2. But right now, still got Campbell at off-ball 1. But he does bring a whole lot of advantages to what you could do with him as a pass rusher. So maybe it's kind of a hybrid role, some edge, some off-ball, because I also think Trenton Simpson's had some good tape this year too. So don't know if you're necessarily rushing him off the field whatsoever. But, man, Jahad Campbell, that feels very much like a Ravens pick. Commanders, I like Manor. This to me is too low. I see a lot of Cortland Sutton and Manor, kind of similar size, height and weight profile. I'm kind of anticipating similar athletic profiles as well. So I think that's going to be a comp you start to see more of for Manor. And maybe you've already seen it. But I love this fit. Like, this is the X receiver that Cliff Kingsbury – I mean, Noah Brown to an extent, yeah. But Manor, I think, just does it better, right? And then they've already been a lot better, Cliff Kingsbury, that is, assuming he's back as the OC. Maybe he gets a head coaching job. He's been really good about changing his ways, what he normally does. He's been moving Terry McLaurin around the formation a lot more than what he did the first 4 weeks maybe of the season. Manor's the guy you could just left wide receiver. He's our X, and he's going to run this route tree, and that's going to be what he does, down and down out, and he'll still do it at a high level. But I do love that Cliff Kingsbury's been more willing to change up his normal process for calling plays and how he moves guys around and all that sort of stuff. He's kind of broken the mold of what we think of for a Cliff Kingsbury offense. Adding Alec Manor into that bigger frame than what they got right now, contested catch ability, but still speed and ability to go stretch the field. Love that as a compliment to guys like Terry McLaurin and De'Ami Brown, who's coming off a really, really nice game last time out. Buffalo Bills, last 4 picks here. Xavier Watts for the Bills. Yeah, I think they could definitely add a safety to the mix. And Watts is like not going to be an all-world tester, which then people are going to – this is going to be another guy that he's doing it at a lower point in the draft board, which really sucks. But like Kyle Hamilton, right? Like checks every box imaginable other than like the 40's not great. Which, by the way, just like small detour here, I actually talked to some people on track and field team at college I was working at the time. I just kind of asked him about it, and I showed him the 40, and they were like, he could have shaved off at least a tenth of a second just by not weaving in the lane, right? Like, you could tell this guy is not like a track background, worked at this. He's a football player, and that was his focus. If he had like gone into track training, he runs a lot better over 40 than what he did. And in turn, the Ravens get one of the best players in football, one of the best players at that position, maybe the best safety in football at pick 14, an absolute steal. So anyways, small tangent aside, I don't think that's necessarily the case here with Xavier Watts. I think he's just kind of an average middle-of-the-road athlete, but with wicked ball skills, great football IQ, and he's always in the right place at the right time, understands positioning, understands how to stack against a receiver deep down the field. Again, right place, right time, good ball skills, good hands. He almost never comes up empty on like an opportunity. If you throw a potential pick to Xavier Watts, the man comes down with it. And as a Notre Dame fan, God bless him for it. He's one of my favorite players to watch within the last few years. So love this fit. Just feels like this team's still trying to work their way through replacing Micah Hyde and Taylor Rapp. And I think Xavier Watts would certainly be a step in the right direction. Furthermore, no team plays more cover one in the nation than Notre Dame. That tells you all the faith that they have in this guy. So why not the Bills here at 61? Grace Bell, love him as a guard, center type. A little bit late to the party on him, but love the movement skills. I think really at center, there's something there. Like if he went to the Lions, I would love to see Grace Bell as like the Frank Ragnow heir apparent. Kind of like what the Eagles did with the name who's now, of course, escaping me. But Kelsey's kind of in the mix, helps them specifically draft a guy to be that replacement for when Kelsey steps aside. I would love to see Ragnow work that magic, and hopefully Grace Bell's the dude there. But here, yeah, his movement skills and that zone blocking scheme, you plug him in at guard. Makai Becton's said to be a free agent and probably going to make a lot of money. You can totally see a world where Zabel is just stepping in there at right guard and becoming a day one starter for Philadelphia. Jaden Higgins to the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, they don't really have that, X type until they got DeAndre Hopkins this season. So in a lot of ways, I can just see this being, hey, DeAndre Hopkins might be gone after this year. Who can step into that role? Jaden Higgins makes a lot of sense, but you're doing it at a younger age. He's more explosive, probably more long. At this point, more long speed and 4 years of control at a much cheaper price point than DeAndre Hopkins. So, yeah, I like that a ton, and potentially rich getting richer for that Chiefs offense. The last pick here is an interesting one. Benjamin Morrison going to the Detroit Lions. Dane actually replied, so I am seeing this a little bit later. So this was one pick that was spoiled to me prior to seeing this. I try not to open these up before you guys get to see my reaction. But that being said, he was talking about this one. First round, if he's healthy, there's just a huge TBD on that hip. And with the way he plays, hip fluidity, man press, turn and burn, you need to know about the whereabouts and the status of how healthy that hip is and how much it could hinder his specific play style. So again, if he's healthy, first round guy for sure. We're just waiting to get more information. That said, I mean, with his skill set, man coverage specialist, wants to go get guys to the line of scrimmage. If the league makes a mistake and lets Aaron Glenn stay in Detroit for one more year as a DC, this is the guy that totally fits his MO of what he wants in an outside corner. Even if Glenn's gone, I assume they're going to hire from within and they're going to get a guy with a similar type of philosophy, maybe a little bit of adjustment, but I feel like they're going to have some guy cut from the same cloth coming from probably hired from within. So Benjamin Morrison, nevertheless, still a really nice fit for that style of defense. Man, really rock solid mock draft. Also want to give Dane Brugler the benefit of the doubt. Not many guys at the level that Dane Brugler is at are doing 2-round mock drafts. It's mostly, degenerates like me. So really want to tip the cap there for him going above and beyond, give us an extra 32 picks to kind of diagnose and break down here. I'm going to give Dane an A-. I think this was a rock solid mock draft. A lot of really interesting fits, some different fits than what we normally see. There's some guys that maybe that guy's a little high for me. Maybe that one's a little low, but that's just, personal preference there. So I'm going to give Dane an A-. And a lot of that is, dude gave us a 2-round mock when he had no need to do that, but I really appreciate the fact that he did. Let me hear your thoughts. What would you grade Dane Brugler's mock? Who's your favorite team? Did you like the picks that Dane gave your squad? Did you not? Who would you have preferred? Maybe a player of the same position or a different player, different position group entirely. Let me hear those thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe as well if you're already here on YouTube. We've got plenty more content planned, a lot more draft content on the horizon. Be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed as well. If you're watching on X, reply back to this post. Feel free to shoot me a DM on X if you would like. If you want to talk more prospects, talk more ball. Or, of course, follow us on X. Give this, the live stream a like and a retweet. Certainly helps us a ton as we continue to try to grow all of our platforms. But let me hear those thoughts about Dane Brugler's 2-round mock draft. Hats off to one of the best in the biz. Dane really is awesome at what he does, and I'm glad that we got the opportunity to break down his 2-round mock draft. But that is going to do it for us. I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And for 32 Beat Writers, my name is TJ. We are signing off.